Good morning. Welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Social Media Manager for HAR. I'm joined this morning by Edward Monker. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning. Before we get started, before I have Edward introduce himself for us, I just wanted to ask you all to go ahead and like or react to this video. If you have questions for Edward, you can go ahead and type them into the comments, and then also share this, because Edward is going to be sharing some really valuable information that is not just good for you to know, but also great for your clients to be aware of as well. So go ahead and do that as well. Edward, thank you again for being here this morning.
Thanks,
good morning. If we could just start, if you could introduce yourself for our members.
My name is Edward Monker. I'm the IT Infrastructure Manager, and I've been with HAR since about 2002 in a variety of IT-related roles. My current role as the IT Infrastructure Manager, basically, I have oversight over all of the technology pieces for HAR.com, typically to operate in support of all the different departments, obviously in support of our Realtor members and affiliates. Mm-hmm. And, in short, anything that's not the website or the app is my responsibility.
Okay, very good. So we actually, and this is why I said, please share this with other people as well. That way more people can hear about this. You have some suggestions for us, five top things that we're doing wrong, and we'll definitely get into that. But before we do, kind of like a buzzword that we've heard a little bit is spoofing, right? So what is spoofing? Can you define that for us, explain that?
So spoofing is used to describe certain types of communication, electronic communication that pretends to come from one source, a trusted source typically, it hides the original sender's origin. So that can present itself in the form of either email communication, it can present itself in terms of a text communication, or even spoofed phone calls recently as well.
Okay. So do you find that some people are targeted more than others for spoofing?
Traditionally, spoofing we'd see more in the business place, targeted towards HR, accounting employees. But with the rise of social media, I think we're all at risk. So I don't think anyone is immune to mm-hmm. seeing spoofing showing up in some type of communication. And again, it's not so much an attack itself; it's a framework or a technique used to disguise an attack. Okay,
so I mean, just because we have so many buzzwords and it can be confusing, would you say it's the same thing as hacking or something different?
It is something different. Again, it's more of a technique to disguise a hack attempt. For example, I send an email purporting to come from a CEO, mm-hmm. and I want an employee to carry out some business-related function. Mm-hmm. But with maybe transferring funds to an unauthorized account. I would spoof that CEO's email or their sender name mm-hmm. In order to convince the employee that this was a legitimate request. So again, the hack can follow or can be underlying, but the spoofing is just the assurance that mm-hmm. this communication is coming from someone that you trust.
Okay, and you have some examples that you wanted to show us as well, right?
Absolutely.
So we're going to pull those up so that we can see those.
So a lot of times we look after the fact, and these things are so painfully obvious. But if we look here, this is an email that's purporting to come from our CEO.
And this is real, right?
Yeah, it's an actual email. Yeah. And if you look at the name says Bob Hale, but the email address is an AOL email address. You can see that the executive has an extra I in there. It just doesn't look right. One of the common things, particularly in this more recent type of email message, it's typically, wanting an errand to be run. They're not able to communicate with you right now. They're in a rush, and they count mm-hmm. on us being, on the move or looking at the message on our mobile devices and not being able to give our full attention and scrutiny to determining that this is suspicious. It's a suspicious message, yes. And the next one. Can we go to that? So the next one here is, a message that purports to be a voicemail message. And if we slow down just a bit and take a look, we can see that there's a Microsoft Word attachment which, if we're expecting an email, why would a Microsoft Word attachment be, accompanying this email? So again, some people are click happy. If we slow down and we scrutinize emails and question, source and also context, I think we can avoid a lot of the, we can identify spoofing, and we can avoid a lot of the targeted attacks that are being sent to us on a daily basis.
We've definitely heard about this in terms of wire fraud recently. That's been a major thing that we've been paying attention to and focusing on. But seeing that, even just something as simple as, hey, can you go buy me a gift card? Right. You might think that, well, this seems legitimate, but if you, like you're saying, if you take a second, look at it, see who the sender's from, and even the context of who it's from, I think, right?
Exactly.
It would make a little more sense. So how can we better identify spoofing?
Like I said before, the question really is, if we slow down and we look at the source, where the email is coming from, is it a trusted sender? Is it within a context that we expect to be communicated to from that sender?
Right.
Any suspicious attachments, just again, if we slow down and look at the email itself or the communication in the case of a text message, is it normal for my CEO to be asking me to go out and purchase, iTunes gift cards or Steam Gaming Network gift cards? And so, as much as we might like to be the person that comes through in a pinch for, someone that is our CEO or our supervisor or our boss, a quick phone call to follow up and confirm that this is a legitimate request can really save a lot of headache for everybody involved.
So you do have, you shared that there are 5 top ways that most people are putting themselves at risk. So I want to get into those, but just a reminder, if you do have questions for Edward, type them into the comments and we'll get to those questions in just a little bit. Also, if you're liking what you're seeing, be sure to share it so that others can see this as well, because these 5 things, he's actually already shared some of them with me. I know they're going to be good for you guys. All right, so let's take it away. What do you have for us?
So, I came up with, there are a whole lot of things that we can do better, but to reduce it to just 5 things that we can do to improve our online data security, our online security and ultimately our data privacy. Reiterating, question all incoming communication. If we put a filter in it, in our minds on the communication that we're receiving, do I know the sender? Is this normal for how the sender is known to communicate? Is what I'm being sent normal for my job role? For example, if I'm not typically someone that handles invoices, or I don't work in accounts payable, and I see an attachment that has an invoice attached, should I let my curiosity get the better of me? And I would say no. Does the from email address appear to be legitimate? And also verify. It's not at all unusual, and it's actually recommended. Pick up the phone. Slow that process down and just call. And if you can't verify with some, what we call in technology, out-of-band communication, meaning if you contact me through email, I'm going to use a different band, which is a text message to verify or a phone call to verify. Particularly when it comes to financial transactions, then don't proceed with it.
I think we just live in such a fast-paced world. It's hard for people to do that, right? Especially if you think it's coming from, like we're saying in this case, a CEO, or if it's coming from maybe, it seems like it's coming from a client or a title company, right? It's hard to take that step back and do that, but really it's in everybody's best interest that you do.
Absolutely it is. Cybercrime is something that is growing. I think according to the FBI's most recent statistics in 2017 being the year that we have access to, cybercrime is a $1.4 billion industry, and real estate has, I think in that report, maybe about 56 million was specifically tied to real estate for victim losses. So, it's a significant amount of money. And if we, we don't want to become part of that story, and if we want to do our part to actually mitigate that, then certainly, using our best practices, even when it seems to be a little inconvenient, would be the wise thing to do.
Okay.
The second thing to do is use a password manager.
Okay.
So the typical user has about 91 passwords to remember. And if you take that, and apply that to business users, we have about 190 passwords. And as much as we like to think that we're really good at a lot of things, remembering passwords and creating strong, unique passwords is perhaps not one of the things that the majority of us are suited for. So if you use a password manager, there's some benefits to that. Password managers create long, unique passwords. They track those passwords for us. They also manage the passwords so that when we go to a website, it'll automatically enter those passwords on our behalf. There are also additional features in some password managers to create secure encrypted notes. So if you had particular messages or notes you wanted to save online or share with someone, that's a good way to do that. And then for businesses, there are some additional features, usually in a paid version, where if you have admin staff or someone that doesn't need to, let me backtrack. If you have admin staff that need to update your social media or access certain business-related accounts, but they don't necessarily need to know the password, and in the unfortunate instance where they're no longer with the company, you want to withdraw those credentials,
right.
There are features where they'll actually allow for those admin staff to be able to access websites without knowing the passwords and obviously withdraw access whenever it's necessary.
That's great, because I know there's a lot of businesses that will use joint accounts for storage, like maybe they use Google and they keep a bunch of Google documents or spreadsheets, and they have admins that have access to that. I know we have opinions about using Gmail for business, but but it is something that they do give a lot of people access to. And then, like you're saying, what if they're no longer employed? Then you have to go revoke that, change everything. And so this sounds like a really good solution.
Exactly. So a password manager, in my opinion, is perhaps, if there's nothing else that you take away from the session today, utilize a password manager because I know that some of us think that we've thought of the perfect password and we want to use it everywhere.
Password 1, 2, 3.
But the problem with that is that if that one password, if one website becomes compromised and that password is out there, then it puts your additional user accounts at risk.
And for most of us, that's about 190 different accounts, you're saying.
Exactly.
So that's a lot of risk.
Yes, it's certainly not insignificant. The third thing you can do is enable the advanced features in your social media accounts.
Okay.
Many of us, are not aware of features that, for example, Facebook offers that will allow you to keep track of or notify you if there are new sign-ins to your account or if there's a new sign-in from a particular geographical location that's unusual based on trends. There's also, you're given the ability to review current logins or past logins and actually, not withdraw, but you can terminate those logins at any particular point in time. You can also review your account recovery options. And I was working with someone, a family member, fairly recently, and she's going to kill me, but she forgot her password. And so we went through the whole password recovery thing and said, okay, well, enter your Hotmail password. And she's like, I don't know the password for that. I haven't used that in 7 years. And then the next security question was like, what's your second grade teacher's name? She's like, I don't remember that. So what it reminded me of is that some of these things we've set up many years ago, and maybe the recovery email that should be a fail-safe to recover your account is no longer utilized. So, if we review those the account review or account recovery options, then I think that that's certainly something that will go a long way to just making sure that you're on top of things.
And it seems like a lot of those platforms from time to time will pop up and ask you, do you want to go ahead and review your security and your backup and stuff like that?
And we usually say
no. We say, nah, I'll do that later, right? So it's a good idea to just take that prompt and go with it. Or like you're saying right now, just go and do it while you're thinking about it, right?
Another feature that's offered in terms of the additional or the advanced features is to use multi-factor or two-factor authentication. And what that is really is, in addition to your username and your password, there's another factor, like maybe an SMS text message. Perhaps there's a hardware token that you carry with you that you'd have to insert into your computer in order to validate along with your credentials that you are who you claim to be. So, the clear advantage to that is if your username and password somehow do become exposed, if you have that additional level of security, then it protects your account from misuse or from it being taken out of your control.
That's right.
The fourth thing to do is just review and assess your social media accounts. It's a good time to figure out, do I want to have a business social media page? Do I want to have a personal social media page? Because the objectives of the two are different. You're the expert on social media, I'm not. But just from a security standpoint, how are you going to handle friend requests from people that you don't know? What information are you going to allow to be available globally versus just restricted to your friends list? What we've seen, in terms of trending, that targets our members as well as some of our staff, particularly people that have a higher profile, is that they're going to go through your entire friends list, and that is the roadmap to using some type of spoofing attempt. Or what we've seen is that there's a social media account that is impersonating you, and then they go through all of your friends list and start communicating with those people, trying to get them to respond, again with a view to monetizing that. It may seem silly to me or you. Why would you need an iTunes gift card or a Steam gift card? And the simple answer to that is that there's some value, and they can trade it, they can manipulate it, and somehow cash out. So again, review what your purpose, what you're trying to accomplish in social media, and then determine which vehicle, whether it's a personal or a business-related page, that's going to help you to accomplish that, whatever those goals are.
What about also friend requests? Well, you mentioned friend requests from people you don't know, but when it's seemingly somebody that you do know, and you're thinking to yourself, I think I'm already friends with Edward on Facebook.
That is an automatic red flag. If I see that I have a friend request from someone that I know that I've already been friends with, sometimes I ignore it. Other times, what I'll do is I'll let them know, hey, there's an account that's purporting to be you. What I do not ever say is you've been hacked, because that is a totally different scenario. And I think it causes people to panic. It doesn't provide the proper context around what is happening. Any one of us can be impersonated. The difference between impersonation, which someone is just purporting to be you with another account, and being hacked is, if you've been hacked, it's legitimately my account that I've lost control of, and now that is reaching out. So, in those instances where I get those requests from someone who I already know, I take the extra step. I'll go to that profile page, I'll screenshot it, I'll make sure that in that screenshot, the URL that provides essentially the shortcut to the username for that profile page is visible. And I will send that along to the person that's being impersonated, just so that they have a little more information if they wanted to report it to Facebook or any of the other social media companies. And Facebook in particular gives you, on the upper right-hand corner of the profile page, you can actually report it as being an impersonated account.
Right. I think also with that, again, it's a matter of taking the time to think about it, because I know there are many realtors that have, thousands of friends on Facebook. Absolutely. And they get a friend request from somebody and they're thinking, I think we're friends, but I'm not sure. And then they just accept, like, well, maybe we weren't, right? Yeah. But again, like you're saying, take the time to just verify, maybe go look for that friend and see if it's a duplicated account, right? And just double check.
And you also risk, bear in mind, anyone that is on your friends list, depending on how your account is configured, they can view your date of birth. They can view who your family members are. Why that's important? These are some of the security questions that have traditionally been asked, of you to provide answers to your online banking or some other critical or important to you e-commerce or web-based site. So again,
so it's not just the other person who may be in some sort of risk, but you are also putting yourself at risk.
Yes. Yeah. And finally, this is an oldie but goodie. I'm surprised we're still talking about this, but don't connect to free public Wi-Fi. And I know it's convenient, but it's something that I can't find the words to stress adequately why you don't want to do this. What's free public Wi-Fi? You know, airports, hotels, coffee shops, and typically the ones that place you particularly at risk are the ones that don't require a passphrase in order to connect. Mm-hmm. There's some confusion, you know, and I had a discussion with someone fairly recently that they were like, oh, I was at the hotel and I connected to secure Wi-Fi. And I'm like, okay, let me guess. It was a room number and last name. And they said, yes. Well, that's not secure. That's just for billing purposes or to make sure that someone didn't just walk in the lobby and connect. Mm-hmm. But that is not secure Wi-Fi. You're basically passing all of your information through what you trust and you hope to be the hotel's Wi-Fi, but it could be something other than that. Or it could be, you know, it could be legitimately the hotel's Wi-Fi, but poorly secured. So again, in those instances where you're traveling, if you must, I would say, you know, look into using a VPN, which is a virtual private network service that will essentially add an extra level of security to your communications. But you also have the option of, on most phones, you can you know, use your phone as a wireless hotspot. Right. And so I would suggest that you connect to your phone as a hotspot. And if you had to, you know, do anything, particularly anything that is business related or financially related, I would certainly stay off of the public Wi-Fi. Yeah, that's so the personal hotspot sounds like a much more protected option, right? Yes. Okay, so let me just take a look here to see. A lot of people telling you good morning. Ram, I believe he said this in relation to spoofing. He said he's been seeing this a lot lately, so we have here as well for sure. Yeah, a lot of these, you know, a lot of what we see, there are trends where certain things become a lot more common or popular, and then they kind of die down and they come back. And so what we're seeing right now certainly is a lot of communications that, you know, are clearly spoofed. Again, the objectives behind them in many cases, and the reason why we decided to come on this Member Focus Monday was rather than the typical nuisance emails that we've become accustomed to seeing, a lot of these have clear financial motives behind them, and so that gets into the realm of cybercrime. And so, you know, it seemed to be an ideal time to come on and just share this information with our members. Do you have some statistics or anything else you want to share with us? You know, just something I wanted to reiterate. You know, the cybercrime is a very big business. It's $1 billion business. There are, you know, statistics that you know, readily available. I'd direct some folks to, you know, go to ic3.gov, which is the Internet Crime Communications. Anyway, it's the FBI's website that tracks you know, cybercrime, and it gives you a snapshot into you know, the different categories and the different industries that are being impacted by cybercrime, and then it ties some dollar amounts to those. That's very important. I believe that's the same website we were sending people to report wire fraud. Wire fraud, yes. Well. Yeah. And wire fraud, you know, quite honestly, is fairly new in the real estate space, but it's been tracked since at least 2014, 2015 under business email compromise. I think that it took a while for real estate related transactions to be identified by hackers as being a ripe target, but it's something that, again, has been tracked for a while, and it doesn't make us feel any better about it, but certainly, you know, it's something to be concerned about. Sure. The other website that I can think of, for those of you that want to do a little more heavy reading, Verizon does a very comprehensive cybercrime report every year. So if you just, you know, Google Verizon data breach report, I think 2018 is out. It'll direct you to a website. You may have to register in order to download it, but it's a 60 or so page PDF, and it goes into quite a bit of detail on the types of attacks that they've seen and responded to, and also some industry best practices as well. And I imagine that's open to everybody, that it's not just for Verizon customers. It's not just for Verizon customers. It's not just for tech people. It's for anyone that has an interest in being able to wrap some numbers and also to identify some of the tactics that are being used.
Great. We do have some questions here coming in. Robert has a few password manager questions. He said, any problems or extra difficulty with using on multiple devices? And then his second question, I'll go ahead and give it to you now, is does every password manager remember the password on different sites?
Okay, so the first part of that question, there are no problems with the major password management applications. For example, there's LastPass, lastpass.com. Dashlane is another one. 1Password is yet another. And those actually have multi-platform support. So whether you're on a PC or a Mac or Android or iOS devices, those fully supported. The beauty of it is that if you set up a site on your PC, within a minute or two you pick up your phone and that site has already been configured. What's the other part of the question?
The second part of the question was just, does every password manager remember the password on different sites?
Yes, so they are configured to remember the password on different sites. I think what I particularly like about that, and there's some debate as to whether we should or should not use a password manager. But what I like about it is that if there's an attempt to direct you to an online banking site, for example, and it's not a legitimate site, your password manager won't prompt you to put your credentials in because it doesn't recognize it as being the authorized site. So that's again, a really good.
I didn't think about that. That's a really good point.
Exactly. There are a ton of benefits to that. And so again, if you take nothing else away from this session today, use a password manager. Yeah. And I'll post some pointers on this page at the end of this.
Sure.
And if there are any additional questions, I'll take a look through and see that they're addressed as well.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions already, though. Public Wi-Fi question from Lainey. She said, are the title company guest Wi-Fi accounts protected or just convenient?
That depends. I don't want to single out any particular industry or any particular company.
Yeah.
That's an ideal question to ask the title company or any other company who you intend to use their Wi-Fi. Secure is relative, but let's go back to the basics. If you're not asked to put in, connect to the password, connect to the network and enter a passphrase, then it's likely not a secure network.
Okay, very good. Yaril just mentioned that Bitwarden is a fantastic password manager. It's free and open source.
Okay. I've not used that one, but again, do your research, do your due diligence. There is more to just handling the passwords that you want to be concerned about. How do they handle their back-end security? How open are they with communicating to their members? Who are they backed by? Those types of things. How long have they been in operation?
Right.
But again, I think any password manager is going to be much better at coming up with strong, unique passwords. So those two things are critical,
right.
Strong and unique. Obviously the features that allow you to manage passwords from one site to the next are also important.
Kim asked, do you have a recommendation for secure email message tool? My title company partner's secure messenger tool is limited to PC access and not my iPhone.
A secure email message tool. I'll have to think about that one. Secure emails, you can enable secure emails through Gmail. I know Gmail just recently added desktop support to one of their products. Microsoft Outlook, there are some add-ons that you have to send secure email. And essentially what they do is they take the email and upload it to a third party or to a website, and you are emailed a link to that website. You read the email on that website, and after a certain period of time, those are set to auto expire.
Okay.
But I'll follow up with that question to see if there's something specific, because I think you're asking about on mobile, and I can't think of one that has specific mobile support at the moment.
Okay, great. Pam just had a little comment here. She said, "Don't use the hospital Wi-Fi to pay bills." Lesson learned.
Oh yeah, there unfortunately are a ton of stories where people have, it's unfortunate there was a time of perhaps some stress, but just as you and I are at our workplace today, mm-hmm. there are people whose sole job, some of them, most of them I think are self-employed, but their sole job is to separate you from your money.
Yeah.
And while the internet has been wonderful for communication and also commerce and being able to present yourself as larger than you are, mm-hmm. Particularly if you're a smaller business, it also presents ripe opportunities to be exploited. And again, I can't say enough times that public Wi-Fi, insecure Wi-Fi is just not a good idea.
Yeah. Lainey had a secure email question. If we send docs through Transaction Desk, regardless of real estate email account, is this secure?
I'm not entirely familiar, and I don't want to speak specifically to Transaction Desk. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what I did. I purchased a home. My wife and I just purchased a home a little over 2 years ago, mm-hmm. and the mortgage company we use, we love them. Excellent, very professional. They also had a secure communications platform for submitting documents. What I found, however, was that there was not consistent implementation of send it through here. And so what I did is I took the extra step. I used a program called 7-Zip, the number 7 and then zip. Mm-hmm. And that allowed me to, if I was sending either copies of my tax returns or any other, payroll information, mm-hmm. I would zip it up and encrypt it in a file before I actually sent it. So if there's any question, and I don't know necessarily how it relates to Transaction Desk, mm-hmm. but if you have the option to send an attachment, you can always encrypt it first, send it as an attachment, and then reach out, by phone or text and let the recipient know what the code is to decrypt it.
Right. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Transaction Desk, Zipform, Dotloop, most of them, if you're sending documents through the program, I believe it just sends them an email with a link to then go to their website and see things and download things from there, I believe is how they work. But
okay. Yeah. What we can do as well is after the broadcast, if you want to send a follow-up question to TECH at har.com, I'd be happy to either find the answers for you or to direct you to who the right resource for that particular product or service would be.
Great. We do have one more question from Janie here. She said, would you recommend to save personal family passwords and business passwords separately on places such as OnePass?
I think that's a user choice. I don't think that you're any more at risk one way or another, but it depends on what your comfort level is. For example, if you feel as though there's much more to be lost on the business side, then certainly you can keep them separate. The problem with that, I think, is that I can't think of you being able to accomplish that without having two sets of credentials, mm-hmm. and it's making it. Managing that, I think, could be potentially problematic. But off the top of my head, I can't think of any reason why you need to separate them.
Right.
In the program that I use specifically, there are subcategories that you can assign these credentials to. Mm-hmm. So, from an organizational standpoint, you can separate them, but I don't see a security need. And I can't think of one off the top of my head that would suggest that you'd keep them separate.
Okay. Very good. Let me just double check. And I think that's it from our members. Edward, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's a different experience being on this side of the camera. We always support you all here every Monday. But thanks, and hopefully the information that we shared today is going to prove to be helpful. I can say in our own experience, what we found through our user awareness training is our staff are much, much better at identifying potentially malicious emails. Mm-hmm. And we'd like to see that continue. And hopefully, our members will continue to improve and just find that products and services that are real estate related, you'll be able to manage those, and you won't be at any enhanced security risk.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. So next week, just want to go ahead and let you all know, next week we will have HAR Director of Professional Development, Rita Blevins, on. She is going to be obviously discussing professional development, but specifically in relation to coaching. So we've had a lot of questions. That's actually something that was suggested by our members, is that we have a Member Focus Monday in relation to coaching specifically. So she's going to come on and talk to us about that and some other great professional development opportunities as well. So that's it. We'll see you next Monday at 9 a.m. Have a great week. Bye-bye.